There is a strange reason some homes look expensive even when almost nothing in them is expensive. No designer furniture, no giant renovation, no dramatic wall colors. Just a few quiet decisions that somehow make the entire space feel calmer, more intentional, and more put together. And the frustrating part is that most people don't notice these decisions consciously. They just walk into the room and think, "This place looks good." But once you know what to look for, you start seeing them everywhere. And that's where things get interesting. Because you may not need a new sofa, a bigger TV, or another piece of decoration to make your home look better. You may simply need to stop making 4 small decisions that are quietly working against everything else. The first one is something almost nobody thinks about when decorating: what you choose to leave empty. Most people treat empty space like a problem. There's an empty wall, so they hang something on it. There's an empty corner, so they put a plant there. There's an empty shelf, so they fill it. There's space beside the sofa, so another table suddenly appears. And eventually, the room becomes full. Not necessarily messy, just full. But here's the problem. Your eyes need somewhere to rest. A room becomes visually exhausting when every surface is asking for attention. Even beautiful objects can become distracting when there are too many of them competing at once. Think about a luxury hotel lobby. What makes it feel expensive isn't usually the number of objects inside it. It's the space between them. A large wall might contain 1 piece of artwork instead of 5. A table might have a single vase instead of an entire collection. A seating area might have generous space around it instead of furniture pushed into every available corner. That empty space isn't unfinished. It's doing a job. It gives the important things more visual power. And this creates a simple rule you can use immediately. Before adding something, ask whether the room actually needs it. Not whether you like it, not whether it looks good by itself. Ask whether the room becomes better because it's there. That's a much harder question. And sometimes the best design decision isn't buying something, it's removing something. Take a bookshelf, for example. If every shelf is packed from one end to the other, your eye sees one large block of objects. But remove a few pieces, create small gaps, and suddenly the things that remain become easier to notice. The shelf didn't get more expensive, it just became easier to read. And that idea works across the entire home. The quietest spaces often feel the most intentional because they aren't trying to prove anything. But there's another decision that can change a room even more dramatically, and it has almost nothing to do with furniture. It's where you put the light. Most homes rely on one obvious source, the ceiling light. You switch it on, the entire room becomes bright, and technically, everything is visible. But visibility isn't the same thing as atmosphere. A room can be perfectly bright and still feel cold. That's because overhead lighting tends to flatten the space. Everything receives roughly the same attention. The ceiling, walls, furniture, floor. Nothing is emphasized. Now imagine the same room at night with the main light turned off. Instead, there's a lamp beside the sofa, another warm light near a bookshelf, maybe a small light beside the bed. Suddenly, the room has layers. Your eye moves from one pool of light to another. The walls feel softer. The furniture feels more dimensional. And the room seems calmer, even though you're technically using less light. This is one of the quietest upgrades you can make because you don't necessarily need expensive fixtures. You need multiple points of light at different heights. A floor lamp can illuminate one area. A table lamp can create another. A small accent light can highlight artwork or architecture. Even natural light can become part of the composition if you stop covering every window with heavy treatments. And here's the part people often miss. Lighting doesn't just illuminate your furniture. It changes how your furniture feels. The exact same sofa can look ordinary under harsh overhead lighting, and dramatically better under softer, layered lighting. So before replacing furniture, try changing what happens to the room after sunset. You may discover that the furniture wasn't the problem, the light was. Now, the third decision is even quieter. and it has to do with scale. This is one of the biggest reasons a room can feel strangely wrong even when every individual piece looks good. Imagine a huge wall with a tiny piece of artwork sitting in the center. The artwork might be beautiful, but the wall makes it look insignificant. Or imagine a large living room with a tiny rug underneath a massive sofa. The rug isn't ugly. It's simply too small for the job. The room feels disconnected because the proportions don't communicate with each other. And this is why copying individual pieces from beautiful rooms often fails. You might find the exact coffee table you saw online, the exact lamp, the exact chair. But if the proportions of your room are different, the result won't feel the same. Good design isn't just about what you own. It's about how the size of one thing relates to everything around it. A small room often needs fewer, better scaled pieces. A large room can handle larger visual anchors. A narrow hallway may need vertical elements rather than wide ones. A tiny artwork might work beautifully in a small, intimate corner, but disappear completely above a long sofa. And there's an easy test. Stand back. Don't look at the object itself. Look at the relationship between the object and the space around it. Does the artwork feel lost? Does the rug look like a small island underneath the furniture? Does the coffee table feel too tiny for the seating? Does the ceiling light look strangely small in the room? These aren't necessarily style problems. They're proportion problems. And proportion is one of those things you feel before you understand. You walk into a room and something feels off. You can't explain it. You just know. Often, your eye has already detected the imbalance before your brain has identified the reason. What should I notice first when I walk into this room? Then ask, what should I notice second? And finally, what can remain quiet? That last question is incredibly powerful, because great rooms aren't made from constant visual stimulation. They're made from contrast. Something catches your attention. Something supports it. Something disappears into the background. That difference creates depth. And this is why a room with fewer decorations can sometimes feel far more sophisticated than a room filled with beautiful objects. It's not because minimalism is automatically better. It's because attention has been organized. Think about a restaurant. The best restaurants don't necessarily have the most decorations. They create an experience. You notice the entrance, then the lighting, then the table, then the food. Your attention moves naturally. The environment isn't shouting everything at you at once. Your home can work the same way. And here's where the 4 decisions come together. First, leave some space empty. Second, layer your lighting instead of depending entirely on the ceiling. Third, match the scale of your furniture and decoration to the room. And fourth, decide what deserves attention before everything else. None of these require a massive renovation. That's exactly why they're so useful. Because when people think their home needs an upgrade, they often jump straight to shopping. New sofa, new rug, new artwork, new curtains, new coffee table. But buying more things can actually make the underlying problem harder to see. If the room has poor scale, more furniture won't fix it. If the lighting is flat, another decoration won't fix it. If there is no hierarchy, another focal point only creates more competition. And if every surface is already full, adding something else simply removes another place for the eye to rest. So instead of asking, "What should I buy?" try asking a different question. What decision is this room currently missing? That shift changes everything. You start looking at your home differently. You notice that the artwork isn't necessarily wrong. It's just too small. The sofa isn't necessarily ugly. It's just fighting with 3 other focal points. The room isn't necessarily boring. It may simply have one harsh light source. And that empty wall you were planning to fill? Maybe it was never empty. Maybe it was giving the rest of the room to breathe. This is the part of interior design that rarely gets talked about. Beautiful spaces aren't always created by adding better things. They're often created by making better decisions about the things that are already there. And once you understand that, you stop chasing the appearance of expensive design and start understanding what actually creates it. Because the most beautiful home isn't necessarily the one with the biggest budget. It's the one where every decision feels intentional, where the eye knows where to go, where the light creates atmosphere, where the furniture belongs to the scale of the room, and where empty space isn't treated as something that needs to be filled. So before you buy anything for your home, stop for a moment. Look around. What is competing for attention? What feels too small? What feels too large? Where is the light coming from? And what could simply be removed? You might be surprised by how much better your home can look without adding a single new thing. Sometimes the biggest transformation isn't what you put into a room. It's the quiet decisions you finally make about what doesn't need to be there.